Let's be honest, who doesn't love looking at a triathlon bike, or at least dreaming about one? Because, well, they look pretty cool, don't they? Now, these bikes come with a whole host of beneficial features compared to a regular road bike, and today I'm going to walk through the benefits of those and tell you why you should seriously consider having one. First and foremost, the striking feature about a triathlon bike is the frame set. Now, when we're riding a bike, up to 80% of the drag that we have to overcome comes from us as the rider rather than the bike itself. So that means that the frame set has to be able to put us into as aerodynamic a position as possible to beat that. Now, these triathlon bikes come with a whole host of alternative features, namely a steeper, more aggressive seat post position, a more aggressive and dynamic cockpit layout, and in more expensive models you can have hydration and integration options too, but I'll touch on those later. Now, you'll notice that the frame sets on these bikes do come with different shaped tubes. They're usually deeper, wider, and larger than you'd see on a regular road bike, and that is essentially so that they can cut through the wind a little bit easier. But those potentially saved watts can come with a trade-off, I'm afraid, and that is usually that these bikes are stiffer, a little bit less forgiving, generally a little bit more uncomfortable actually, and they can also be usually a kilo or two heavier. But that is all in that quest to beat the drag. The second consideration for manufacturers to take into account when designing a triathlon bike like this is the seat tube angle. And what that means is they're able to push the saddle forward in relation to the bottom bracket, which is down here. And what that allows us to do is open up our hip angle when we're sitting on the bike. And what that brings into play is the larger glute muscles in our backside, which are much more powerful, and they can actually save the quads and hamstring muscles, which allows us to be able to run off the bike a bit easier. Now, as a starting point, you can certainly stick a pair of ClipOn Tri Bars onto a regular road bike handlebar, and that will certainly be great for you as a beginner, but it isn't going to give you a very aerodynamic position like you would get on a triathlon specific bike. And that's largely because on road bikes, and like I talked about earlier, they tend to have a slacker seat post angle, and you're sitting further behind the bottom bracket, which in turn lifts the body up and presents more of us to the wind. So looking at the triathlon bike in general and the associated steeper seat tube angle that we talked about, as opposed to the road bike, what we generally have in our cockpit or front end is a base bar, which is here, and then an attached ClipOn Tri Bars, which will always have your gear shifters up here, be that mechanical or electrical shifting. And then a final, more expensive, I guess, option that you can have in a triathlon bike is what we've got here today, and we generally call it the fully integrated option. Now, what that means is that everything that you would need for the bike, be that your brake cables, your gear cables, and even your brakes, which are hidden in here, are all completely out of sight and hidden from the wind, which is far more aerodynamic than the previous options that we talked about. Now, this fully integrated option does come at a premium cost, but the aerodynamic advantages that it brings are substantial, especially compared to the non-integrated option, or certainly the standard road bike like we talked about before. A further extension to the integration options that these bikes can offer is usually they've got some sort of storage compartment that you can add tools, food, or even hydration into. Now, on this bike here, we've got a handy rear storage unit behind the seat post, which you can add in puncture repair tools or the likes to. And a lot of these bikes, and this one too, offer a second supplementary position for a further box, which is really useful for long training rides or certainly on racing, where, like I used to do, you can add in food and things that you'll need for on the go. Now, broadly speaking, the deeper the set of wheels, the faster you'll go. But this isn't always the case and is certainly weather and specifically wind dependent. But the preferred option for going fast, especially for all the top athletes, would be for a rear disc wheel on the bike. However, rarely, if ever, is a triathlon bike actually sold with one of these. In fact, often they don't even come with an optimum deep section set of race wheels, because these are an expensive extra addition. But if it is something that you're thinking about having, I would certainly suggest looking into it, as most aerodynamic experts would say that the benefits from having a good set of deep section wheels, much like these ones, or especially a disc wheel, is an advantage that could outweigh even potentially the savings from a very aero frame set. Don't be too concerned with the saddle that your TT bike would come with. If it's comfy, then great, stick with it and keep using it. But what you find is an awful lot of people will end up trying a variety of saddles and swap that out over time because it is a really personal choice. Now, you may have come across the discussion about whether a triathlon bike is UCI legal or not. Now, this is in reference to global cycling events, and they have to conform to their governing body, which is the UCI, and the rules and regulations that they stipulate. Now, these rules and regulations generally mean things like tube shape, geometry of the frame and its design. Now, the major rules that these have to conform to be UCI legal are that the frame has to have this classic 2 triangle shape that we can see here on this bike. And secondly, that the saddle position has to sit 5 centimeters back of the bottom bracket, which is down here. The rules and regulations for triathlon bikes, however, are far more relaxed than UCI legal versions. Now, what that means is the rider's positions can be far more aggressive and the bike designs can be way more radical. In fact, a really good example of this is the Cervelo P5X. Now, interestingly, this bike here can actually conform to both those codes of regulations. As it sits at the moment, it is in a triathlon or non-UCI legal position. But if I was to take this rear storage unit away, I would be able to move the seat post from its current position where it is in a triathlon position, move it into this new position that would become available, and then it would become a UCI legal bike. So there we have it, a tri-specific bike. Now, if you come across somebody talking about one of those, then hopefully now you're going to know what they are talking about. And if you're considering getting your first triathlon bike, then hopefully you found this video useful, and you will of course let me know in the comments down there below. Please do remember to give this a thumb up button if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to click on the globe to subscribe. And if you fancy seeing a video that was done about triathlon versus TT bike, then you can get that up here. And a further video about a road bike versus a TT bike is here.